Amen. Welcome, gentlemen. Hope you had a good little nappy nap this morning.
I'm so ready.
All good? All good?
So ready for today. Come on. Yeah.
Good morning, man. How's everybody doing after last night? I know I threw a lot of stuff at you guys. I was trying to follow the room, and I'm curious, what are you guys thinking about? Yesterday we talked about what is a man? We want to expand on that. We want to take that even deeper this morning. And the question that I'm going to start with today is something that maybe we fear, something that maybe we've all heard, maybe from a source that didn't know how to shepherd the heart of a man. Who do you think you are? There's the question that I want to ring. We're going to look back only for the point of learning what we need to learn so that by the rest of today we can look forward.
Yeah, come on.
So who do you think you are, man? That's a shame-driven question asked by people in authority. Maybe by people that are crusty old men that get really negative on you, and it leaves an imprint. It leaves a wound. We don't understand. Sometimes we're the ones guilty of it. Again, being reflective, I know I've probably sinned in that area, and I'm sure my son can tell you. So what do we do when we catch ourselves going into this space or in this place of who do you think you are? It's a shame-driven question meant to get your eyes off of Christ and onto yourself and your own inadequacy. And we wonder why we struggle being men when we're asking the wrong question. So I am curious. I want a little bit of interaction this morning. I know it's early, and I know we're just getting off on a foot. So what stuck out? And I can handle feedback, guys. I've got big shoulders. I know who I am. So what did you guys hear yesterday? What is still playing around in your mind when I left you with that thought of identity isn't your history? Your past is not your identity. That's just your history. We're going to expand on some of that today. Your identity is something that we get to build. We're going to be doing that all day today. I'm not going to be throwing as much content at you as I did last night. We're going to try and keep this punched. I want to basically dot some I's and cross some T's and give us some chance to have coffee and fellowship and think and talk about these things. But what stuck with you? Did anybody want to share what stuck out from last night? What are you still thinking about? Murray.
I was just thinking of, for all of us, maybe the history of our background is starting to dislodge. Because the Lord gave through you words that is trying to dislodge that past. You're not worthy. You ain't going to do nothing. You're stupid. You're a fool. Don't do this. What do you think? Who do you think you are?
Right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Murray. Yeah. Isaac.
The power and influence of words has just been like ringing through my head. Even just like, I don't know, I was thinking in Genesis when it talks about God speaking on this into existence. And I don't know, that just it's been resonating with me, and I've just rerunning a lot of conversations I've had in my head last night, even just like what I could have said that unintentionally cut somebody down if I was just thinking about it. And it I didn't even want to have a trip like that last night, but I was up for a good chunk just like revisiting conversations. Like, man, like that little thing could have destroyed this person.
Yes.
And that could have made them why they are the way they held on to the thought. Something in passing, like could have been out of anger, could have been out of spite, it could have just been joking around, like an influence of the way the person lives their life. It was pretty good to be reminded of that.
Thank you for that, Isaac. I want to play on that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but at the same time, what's that?
You can if you like. I'm good at being put on the spot.
Okay, but I actually want to use that as a teaching moment. I want to go into that because again, you don't have to raise your hands, but how many of us would recognize that maybe what we're talking about with patterns, how to change the way that we think, some of the junk that we've allowed the enemy potentially to bring into our life because he got a hold of our tongue.
Yeah, come on.
So when we wound somebody, the first emotion that creates, does it make sense? It would be guilt. Like, I did bad. What the frig was I thinking? I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't realize it would create a ripple. I didn't know it would leave that echo and potentially cause whatever. So guilt suddenly becomes an emotion that could fill this room. But that's not our identity,
You
man.
don't want that, man.
What's that?
You don't want that.
No, but guilt serves a purpose.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to capture is, what do we do with guilt? Who do you think you are? That's a shame-driven question, which is even darker than guilt. Guilt, I did wrong. Shame, I am wrong. So we're talking about this character-defining kind of flaw that the enemy will always try to get us looking at ourselves.
Well, here's crazy, man. I called my wife last night to say goodnight, and she said, hey, my son's name is Bo. He asked her a question last night. I was like, oh, what was the question? And he asked her, how come on movies, boys are always dumber than girls? He's 9. And he's seeing it. And he laughs it off. He's like, that's really dumb. I know that boys and girls are like, there's the same smart, in his little logic. But he's like, how come they always show that the boys are dumber? And it's like, yes, it's happening forever, constantly, from a young age. And thank God he picked up on it and he can process it.
Yeah.
But it's the strategy. Who do you think you are, you dummy?
That's right.
What are you doing?
That's right.
Like, from 9, man. It gets me peed off because...
Good. Let it get us peed off. Let it light that fire, because we're going to get to a point, hopefully even in this morning session, where we can direct that kind of anger. I want to wake up your anger, man. We need a generation of fighters. We need soldiers to bear the name that they bear and go wage war against the enemy. That's who we are. We got to understand what God has called men to do. We are the stopgap. We are the bridge that, like, he provided the bridge, but he needs us to get out there and bring the truth, bring the light into the dark. So how do we do that? Let's get practical. Does anybody here speak Chinese?
No.
Okay.
How did we go from practical to speaking Chinese?
Good.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually going to link something to the Chinese. So the word that I probably hear the most in my clinical practice is crisis. And we might even talk about a crisis of manhood right now. There's a crisis with the fatherless generation. We have men who have no idea how to be men.
Right.
We have no template. We know what the standard in Scripture is. We know what we're called to do, but then we are woefully inadequate and ill-equipped to get there, and that drives a lot of guilt and shame, because I'm not that. Why would you waste your time with me, God? Who do you think you are?
Last night when you and I had that talk there, it got me thinking, I'm like, oh, okay. It's not what I thought it was, it's what you thought it was, and it's like, well, fine, don't worry about it.
Right. Can I share what we talked about?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, really quick, what we had talked about was he has a gift of prophecy. And he questions why God would give that to him when people don't respond to the word of prophecy. And that was a hang-up for him. Am I supposed to keep giving words that fall on deaf ears and they're not doing what God has called me to speak into? And I shared with him one word: responsibility. And it's a word I need each of you to maybe play with. Think of that as one big word, but it's a compound word, guys. Can someone other than you break up? Can someone take responsibility and tear it into 2 pieces for me?
Response is one piece, definitely.
And what's the other piece?
Ability.
Ability. So the ability to respond. That's what we're talking about. How many men carry false responsibility? We think we should do something, but we don't actually possess the ability to make that other person respond differently. Are you guys with me?
Yeah.
So that is a lack of responsibility. What is he responsible for? To deliver the prophecy. That's it. And if God puts it on him, he doesn't get to orchestrate what God does with that spoken word. So I challenged him, share anyways. Love anyways. Give that cup of kindness anyways. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. Leave that to the Lord, because that's not our responsibility, because we don't actually have control. And that can be a really challenging word for us. Yes, Sylvia.
And then while you're saying all those things, this is where guilt and shame builds up the assumption.
Yes. Yes. And remember what we talked about yesterday? What's the root of assumption?
Here.
Fear. So now we've got fear, guilt, and shame. Let's do something with that. And this is why I'm bringing up the Chinese. There's a method to my madness. So I'm going to show you guys a symbol. I hate tattoos. Just kidding.
Someone held you down.
This might make a great tattoo. I've had a couple clients go and put this.
us.
What?
You don't need to lie to us about not liking tattoos.
I'm not lying. I'm just embellishing a little. Okay. You guys know my heart. So I'm going to share with you guys this symbol because it's fun and it's a great way to teach something, because I've studied this word crisis over and over and over. People come to me in crisis of faith, crisis in identity, crisis in their marriage, crisis with addiction, pornography, sin, addiction, whatever. Crisis is a very, very big word. So I wanted to figure out, what is crisis? Almost like I'm asking you, who do you think you are? I want you guys to think about, well, what is crisis? What do we think crisis is? Is it all bad? And the best definition that I found was found in the Chinese. So this isn't going to mean anything to most people, but I want to do this symbol because it's a really cool symbol.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, everybody knows what it means, of course. Yeah, totally.
Of course.
Yeah. We got a bunch of kidders in the room. Okay.
Pi squared.
Maybe in some ways. So the way the Chinese make words is they'll take 2 or 3 different symbols and they'll squish them together to make it something new. The word crisis in the Chinese is actually 2 symbols. This one over here is the symbol for danger. And I don't think it takes a genius to figure out that, if nothing changes, nothing changes. We go away from a weekend like this. We feel the presence of God. We know there's a challenge on our heart to be men. We know we're supposed to come alive.
Yeah.
And then we walk away from it and we go right back into the danger. Nothing changes because the change happened here. It didn't happen here.
Right.
I don't want to tickle your brain, men.
Come on.
I want your heart to soften. I want God and the Holy Spirit to just come in here and lead us into a generation of being mighty men of valor who understand what it is to bear his name, to know how to deal with crisis of any sort. This is the kind of stuff that I do deep work with people, and I'm going to do my very best to condense this in 10 minutes because I want us to have a chance to process this. So I'm not going to get super deep. I'm just going to do a high-level approach on danger, but there's another symbol. We're going to talk about this later this morning, or potentially this afternoon. I can't remember where I put it. But this symbol is my favorite symbol. This is the symbol for opportunity.
Ooh, come on.
So now we see the word picture. What is a crisis? It is a dangerous opportunity. Many of us don't know how to change the lens that we look at our problems with. You have no idea what I've been through, Troy. I've been traumatized. I've been stuck in addiction. I've been. That's not your identity. That's your history. Yes, it's dangerous. I am not minimizing the effect of your danger or your pain. But don't tell me for 1 second there's not an opportunity here. God can take anything and do anything with nothing.
Yeah.
He created ex nihilo, which is out of nothing. That's what we are made out of. Creatio ex nihilo is what's actually known as spontaneous creation by word. He's given us the same power, men. And when you curse yourself saying, I can't, I'm a waste of skin, I'm stupid, I can't. Jesus is called the high priest of our confession. He can't use that. When you bring those words to the throne, he's like, what am I supposed to do? I'm not going to manifest that. But when you come to him saying, by your power, I know what you've called me to do. I will surrender, and I know I can do this through you. God can manifest that. Sylvia.
This is why you see more that when Jesus approached anybody, it was mostly poor or the sick or people that went through or in crisis mode.
Yep.
And those are the ones that had the best result coming out because they're the best teachers that came out of the lesson because they're using their experience plus what they're taught with to create something.
Yeah. He who's been forgiven much loves much.
Yeah, come on.
So
For sure. It would also be, what Sylvia said, would also help that they were willing to.
of course, there has to be willingness. If you guys, I can't, and I've told my clients this countlessly, if I want their recovery more than they do, guess what happens?
Yeah.
When someone says, I think I want out of addiction, I'm like, you're wasting your time and mine.
Yeah.
Like, do you want freedom? That's what I'm curious about. Don't come here looking for brains to be tickled. Like, oh, that felt good. Check. Now I get to go on for another couple months. Come
Right.
here and invest. You guys have to want this more than I want it for you. No one will question my passion. I know I'm a very transparent guy that way. I'm passionate about what I teach. But I can't want this for you more than you want it for yourself. So we have to understand how to play by the right rules. We have the rule book. But like I said last time, sometimes that seems so lofty and we haven't learned how to prepare our mind, which is where the battle is always fought. And we need to know what to do with this. So here's the thing. I'm going to do this really quick, but there's a question that plagues many of us. It's always found over here on the danger side of crisis, and it's the question, why? I am not going to play with the why question today. This is something much deeper for much later. I do believe I am going to get into this. I am going to bring it back by the end of our time together, but why is the rear view mirror? If we're spending all of our time wondering, well, why do I keep failing? Why do I keep relapsing? Why do I keep treating my wife this way? Why can't I X, Y, Z? Why can't I face my fear? I just had somebody pray over me. Why does it still hang on to me like whatever? Why can't I walk in that? Wrong question.
Right.
And I'm going to invite every one of you today to leave those why questions here with me. They are not adding value to any one of you.
Come on.
So leave me with the why. I can handle the why better than you guys can right now, and I promise I will bring it back when it's time. Sylvia.
That's why you always hear the expression, stop looking back.
Yes, exactly. Because what happens if we're driving, constantly looking in the rearview mirror?
Yeah. Those who look back are not fit for the plow.
That's right. We see that same pattern all the way through Sodom and Gomorrah. Look at Lot's wife. She looked back. We're not those who look back. There's nothing back there other than opportunities to learn. Your identity's not back there, man. We got to figure out what to do with this why question, which we're going to shelf for right now because it's not actually a good question. I want to come over here, and what I love doing with my clients and my friends, my brothers, I want us to talk about what and how.
So guys,
These are better questions.
so why do you say if you look back, you have opportunities?
Say that again?
Isn't that what you said? Like,
Opportunity to
I
learn.
said there isn't anything back there except
okay,
potentially an opportunity to learn. How can we see a pattern that maybe requires breaking? We're not looking back for an identity piece.
If you're like meditating on what you've done, like not meditating on like reminiscing,
Okay?
would that be opportunity? Like
But it depends on the focus of what you're doing. If you're looking to lay accusation at yourself, stupid Mervyn, what the frig was I doing? That's not helpful.
no, like if you're looking back and reminiscing on what you did, it's like, what could I do differently next time?
Yes, those are the better questions.
The what question?
This
that's
is
where
so
you-
what, yeah, that's what we're talking about.
This
So
is where your opportunity is that you just said.
that's right. I'm a bit of a dork this way because sometimes I'll put the word so.
So what now?
Exactly.
That's the worst thing, man. My wife, she's just like that. And I love, I'm growing out of how much I used to love complaining about things. And I would come home from work or wherever, and I'd be like, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, so what are you going to do about it?
Come on.
And I'm like,
I don't know.
I don't want to talk about that right now. But constantly, and so it was like, okay, I get it. She's with the kids all day. She doesn't need to come home and have another baby to take care of. She needs a man who's going to solve his problems. And venting, I get it, but there's a place where it's excessive, and when you're not asking what and how, and you're just going, why? Because that's what that is. Complaining is the why question.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything about it, and you get stale there.
Why can't I have 10 minutes to myself? I worked all day,
Yeah.
right?
If I'm gonna
Why
have
can't I
authority, it's not gonna be a.
And it's self-pity,
Yes,
too.
it is self-pity. It's the locus of focus has gone on self. We're looking at self. It's the same thing that Peter did. We got to remember that Peter walked on water, guys. He did the impossible until he took his eyes off Christ and looked at himself, really. He saw the wind and the waves, and he became aware of his fear, and then he sank.
So we shouldn't look at ourselves in the mirror.
No, when we're looking, no, this is, I'm not saying don't look at yourself, but we're trying to change how we look at ourselves.
I was brought up, the word stupid is not in the language. My mother had told me, no one's stupid, we're all unique and individually in our own way. And if we put our mind to it, we can do whatever we want to do. I said, well, he says, what if I don't want to do anything? She goes, well, fine. She goes, you'd be unique and you'd just not develop to have an opportunity to do what you want to do. And then during the summer, I turned on, I'm bored. She goes, good. I'm like, huh? So she woke me up in the morning at 14 years old. Come on, you're coming with me. You're working in the restaurant.
Right.
Why? You'll have an opportunity to do something and realize that life is never boring. I'm like, okay.
Were you going to say something, Dan?
Yeah, you know, us old guys, we've learned a lot of lessons over the years, most of us. But
Tis the hope.
I'm thinking of a couple of things right now. My wife had a friend and a counselor, a Christian counselor in Hong Kong, and one of the things that he always said to his clients was, first off, he said, do you know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? If they didn't, he said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't help you. When I was a young boy, my dad was a former sailor, and I wanted to know how to row a boat. And so when you look at it, I know my father. I'm confessing, I'm not saying, Dad, I don't know how to row a boat. I'm just saying, Dad, I want to row the boat. Can you show me how to row the boat? So Dad would say, yeah, we'd go out and we'd row the boat. Not very well. We'd go this way and that way and go in circles. And I'd get frustrated and throw the oars down and want to quit. And Dad would say, no, you do this. And then he said, you'll get better. The more you do it, you'll get better. And pretty good, pretty soon you do. You get better and you get stronger and you can row that boat. And it's like our Father in heaven. If we don't know our Father in heaven like that, then we're missing out on a huge opportunity to advance ourselves.
Absolutely.
He wants us. Man, and that's why we need to be in the Word of God. We need to know our God. And so many Christians are not in the Word of God. They don't know their God.
That's right.
God wants us to come to Him and say, Lord, I've got this problem, or I'm this way, and I know you don't want that, or I don't want it, and my wife doesn't want it, or whoever, so I need your help. Would you help me? That's so important. Yeah. We need to go to God, and essentially we're confessing our sin before Him and asking for His help. And it may not come just like that, but just that is a crucial step in my view.
What an interesting line, though. We're confessing our sin for Him to help, not for Him to forgive us.
That's right.
Forgiveness. What an incredible statement. You guys get that. You'll have a different prayer language.
Yep.
I'm not confessing sin so I'm forgiven. I'm already forgiven.
That's right.
I am sharing with God, who can help me, what's going on in reality.
It's not what's wrong, it's what's missing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Come on.
And a lot of us, to capitalize on what's being thrown around the ring, take this to a heart level, men. Most of us have no problem believing that we were forgiven, past tense, for past sin, possibly even present sin. But when we start to think in the domain of the future sins, the things we've yet to do, are we really believing that God is unaware of what we're going to do 6 weeks from now? And yet those sins and 6 years from now are also pinned to the cross. So to what Tyler's saying, we're not confessing to be forgiven. Forgiven is a part of your identity.
Yeah, come on.
It is your state. You don't leave forgiven as an identity. Why do we confess if it's not to be forgiven? It's to restore relationship. It's to get to know Dad. He already knew we were going to screw it up. He's already paid for it. It is done. It would be just as pointless to go to the DMV Autopack and then try to pay a fine that was already paid. Your Honor, I want to pay. Sorry, it's already been paid. No, that's mine. I need to. No, it's already been paid. Go out of here. We're talking about something that has already been dealt with. Your state, your identity is forgiven, loved, chosen, called. We're going to get into this. I'm getting ahead of myself. That's what we're talking about this afternoon is who are you? Not who we were, who we think we are. So how do we deal with this? How do we let that word of forgiveness pattern our thinking? That is the opportunity. We need to figure out, what does a holy God do with all of our mistakes? Why does he forgive? Wrong question. So what do I do in the knowledge of, I'm forgiven? You're not going to bring anything to God's attention that he's going to be like, oh, really? You did that in the quiet?
I never saw that.
No. So he knows, and he wants us to be free of that because our state is forgiven. Our identity is forgiven. That so what turns into a now what, which unlocks the how. How do we live this Christian life? How do we become men? How? Not why did I get here and why have these things overtaken me, but so what? I'm not trying to minimize what anybody's going through. No matter how dark that situation is, I'm going to look at each one of you in love and say, okay, so what? You don't know how hard this is. No, you're right, I don't. But I know who's already in the center of it.
Right.
And I know that's not your identity. But if you think it's your identity, then it becomes your identity. Because we're looking back. How do we find an opportunity where previously all we saw was danger? Now, we had 3 key words that were already thrown around, and I need to link this real quick, and then I'm going to move on. There's a root of danger. Something that hides in plain sight. It's right here.
Danger.
What word is this? Anger.
Who's an angel?
Anger. That's awesome. And
I wanted to do it.
what?
I'm not giving credit, but I was laughing at your answer. So.
That's okay. Well done, Cole. So, hiding in plain sight is anger. Guys, some of us are more expressive than others. There's explosive, outward-focused anger, and then there's a whole lot of us that deal with this implosive kind of anger. We stuff it, we bury it, we get really mad at ourselves, others, whatever. What is anger? It's not bad. Anger was designed by God for injustice, but very few things are actually unjust, and they're provoking our anger. It's what I would call distorted anger, not valid anger. 85% of the time, we're talking about something that's twisted. We don't have complete perspective. We're not looking for opportunities. All we see is what could go wrong instead of thinking about what could go right. Sylvia?
So what's a good way of venting without having somebody else
Catch it.
catching it?
Okay.
Because especially like if you're married, that like Daniel said, that a lot of time you're so frustrated and everything else, and somebody to talk to.
Yep.
And it happens to be your wife.
Right. And now we're talking about boundaries, which is a whole other thing. Yeah. So our wives, and you guys can challenge me on this, but I really don't believe our wives are supposed to be our accountability partner. We want to protect that relationship, not turn them into our punching bag.
So what's another way of...
Iron sharpening iron. We need this. Yeah. We need people like me and Tyler and Daniel and other people that are trained to kind of walk through fire with people. There's something about confessing our sins to one another so that we may be healed. But we don't drive that on our wives. That's a good word.
So, to a point though, does your wife have to be your accountability partner? Because like in your marriage, you would be accountable to each other, like finances, kids.
Okay. I'm not talking about extremes. Like there's going to be transparency and there's going to be standards. We're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about stuff like that. But I've watched marriages fall apart because,
your wife's not your coach.
Right.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Your wife's not your coach. And I'm going to suggest that there's nowhere in Scripture that talks about venting. I'm going to suggest that venting is a worldly idea that perpetuates offense.
On him, in a sense.
But on him.
On him.
And so this idea that I just got to get it out of me, I feel like is only appropriate to people who are going to get you to the what.
Right.
Like
so what? With the compassion that says, man, that's tough. That's true. That's whatever. Now what are you going to do about it so that you're not living in that state of offense and anger and whatever else?
Exactly.
I'll say something quick and then I want Troy to take it to the end. But I've been dealing with this with my wife, like literally the last few months, which is, it's fresh. But even how typical females and typical males process information. If I tell Troy about my issues, Troy clicks into problem solving mode, and he's like, "Hey, how can I get through this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, solve."
Yeah.
When I do that to my wife, she takes it on.
Yeah.
She internalizes it and she wears it. Now she's feeling the pressure of the job fell through, or the guy at work was mean, or I didn't see this coming. And so rather than helping me solve the problem, she carries it. And she starts bearing a burden that I'm supposed to bear. And this reminds me of, who's seen Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah.
So there's a scene, all the guys are complaining. And they ask Tom Hanks' character, they're like, "How come you never complain?" He's like, "Complaints go up. I don't complain to you guys because I'm the one in charge here. You complain to me and that's fine. But I complain to my guys. I don't complain to you because that wouldn't solve anything. It would just demoralize you." Essentially is what he says. And this isn't to say you're higher than your wife or that you're more whatever, but you have a role in the relationship to carry responsibility and to shoulder things in a way that releases her from burden. And like you said, I totally agree with you. She is not your accountability buddy, right? That's what another, and she doesn't want to be, guys.
No.
She doesn't want to be. And she'll actually come into her femininity and you'll express your masculinity in a way more full and satisfying way if you can see that. But you have to look for other opportunities to...
Right. Can you imagine what it would feel like, and I'll get to you in a minute, Isaac. I see your hand. I see that. No. So when we're thinking about the femininity, masculinity thing, imagine what it would feel like for our wives if we could come back and not vent. She's like, "Honey, how's your day?" And you're honest. You're like, "You know what? It's been a day. It's been a day. I'm talking with my coach. I'm talking with God. I know that there's a way through this. I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do yet. So, hon, if you can pray for me, whatever." But that's different. I'm not dumping on her. I'm testifying. My test is becoming my testimony. My mess becomes my message.
And it's not like you sit there and make it like nothing's happened.
No.
You don't
like
fake
the battle's real.
It's not denial.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
But it's like,
Yeah, but we're not going back here. Why is this happening, hon?
Yeah.
Like,
what are we going to do?
No.
Because now she's insecure. Now she
That's
feels
right.
insecure in the marriage.
That's right.
And she doesn't think that you're going to carry the load and take care of her. She doesn't care if you have issues as long as she knows you're handling it.
That's right. And with a less developed, with a less mature woman, to what Daniel's saying is it will actually activate their own insecurity.
Yeah.
A guy sharing about his struggle with pornography suddenly turns into a woman feeling, "I'm not enough for you.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me?" And we're not saying that to her, but that's the way she takes it, is what's wrong with me. It wasn't about... That's another... Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Isaac.
My question is backtracking a little bit, but I wanted to clarify, because are you blanket statementing that venting is not scripturally, like, just at all? Because I'd argue that all of Psalms, all of Song of Solomon's, all of Proverbs, all of, like, a good chunk of the Bible is just venting to God. Whether that's angry venting, happy venting, sad venting, it's like a good chunk of the Old Testament at least is venting to God.
I would. Listen, we'll start sidebar this because this will be a 20-minute conversation. It just will. But the reality is that David's not venting. He's going to the source and he's sharing with the source what's happening in his reality.
Yeah.
And 90% of the end and conclusion to all those Psalms and Proverbs are what he's hoping.
Yeah.
So it's like, the enemy's all around me, God, and where are you right now? And that's just like reality. This is where I'm at. But I trust in you and I hope in you and I know you've got my back, and that's where it concludes. And so that's not venting. Venting is, I'm complaining. I'm complaining about what's going on in my reality. He wasn't complaining, he was sharing reality with the guy who could. And that's what I actually like about Daniel's point of, we can vent to God all we want. We can. Because I guarantee you, I've done this. You'll end with, but my hope is in you. I love you, and I thank you that you can take care of this. Okay?
Okay, this is great.
The reason why I'm saying that, I know for myself, is like, before I was 17, I kept everything in. then my venting wasn't like it is now. It would be boom, and you get it all at once.
Yeah.
And that when you're 17, that usually meant your teachers.
Right.
And now, for me to vent now is preventing me from
Bottling it all up. Yeah.
to a student or somebody that you can't take it back.
Yep. Like we said last night, it's progressive. We're not going to flip on a light switch and go, guess what? I don't vent anymore. I'm so aware. Like, there's grace, guys.
But is it venting or is it seeking help?
Right. Maybe we're using the
Like
wrong language.
And I think we blanket this word venting, but what we really mean is we're complaining.
Right.
And so we do have to flip from I'm complaining about the situations in my life to I'm seeking help with
yes.
the situations.
Defining the terms is important.
That's right.
Because oftentimes when I would complain, I wasn't looking for an answer.
Yeah.
I wanted to bitch and moan
Yeah.
about my day, and I didn't want to hear a solution because I wanted. It was almost like a vengeance in a sense because I can complain about this a-hole who did.
Don't
this.
you know the right that I have to
Exactly
whine about this? It's like, well,
what are you gonna do about it?
Exactly.
And then it guts you,
right.
Because it's
Okay, so I want to wrap this up so that we can have a bit of a fellowship and talk about this. Really quick, high level, I'm going to get through this. I'll take a couple questions at the end, but I'm not going to be looking at you guys for about 10 minutes. So,
wrong.
Anger. We know it's a secondary emotion, guys. This isn't the problem. What I've learned, and you guys can challenge me on this, but some of the key words that are coming out, I want to put back into context. What drives anger? We've got things like fear as the number one. We've got pain. We've got shame. And we've got guilt. These are the 4 reasons that I always see are driving anger. I am bad. I did bad. Pain, emotional, physical. Someone with 30 years of chronic back pain, they're going to struggle with anger because we're focused on that pain, or it's the fear. It's the what if. This is where we take something good and we use it bad. What if this happens? What if God doesn't? What if I pray? What if I try? What if I fail? And we're not thinking about, well, what if I fly? What if I take that step of faith and God's right there on the water?
Hallelujah.
Right? Yeah. So we're asking the wrong questions. If we're going to overcome fear, we're going to have to deal with that what if question. And I would submit to you, we change it to an even if statement, not a what if question. It's, you know what? Even if I take this step of faith and it fails, I'm not hiding from it. I'm doing it anyways. Even if I put myself out there, even if I reach out to that neighbor, even if I confess my sins to another brother and they judge me for it, I'm doing it anyways. Even if breaking out of this cycle of addiction is the hardest thing I ever did, I'm going to take that step of courage anyways. I would rather try and fail than not try. So that's what we're talking about is the even if. It's a faith-based response to fear. Even if I don't have perspective, even if it takes me the rest of my life, I know what God's called me to. And if he brings me to it, he will lead me through it. Right? So a little bit further down here, high level stuff here. We're going to try, we were talking about this morning actually, which was so ironic. Not ironic, it was providential because I knew it was going to come up this morning. But we all play with a certain narrative. We've been taught this by society, and I'm not a big fan of societal imprinting. I could spend a whole day talking about that. But we learn incorrectly to play the role of a judge. So we think we're evaluating. We think we're being wise and discerning. But really, if I were to boil it down, how many of us struggle with maybe even prejudging things, prejudice? We prejudge. This isn't going to work. I've done this already. I've been there. I've done that. That's not going to work. We suck. We suck at this. There is one judge, and we're not him.
Hallelujah.
So if we could finally give up this, we need to know what to give it up to, though. So if we're not supposed to judge because we are horrible at it, then I would submit to you that what we need to move towards is how in the world could we learn to be a better detective? Detectives don't judge. They ask better questions. They take all the information that has been thrown into your lap from your past, from your present, and we simply go, okay, so what do I do with this? What do I do with this mess? Instead of going, why is this my mess? Wrong question. Why do I judge myself? Oh, I'm such an idiot. I shouldn't have allowed this to happen, whatever. How do we get to that point where it's like, okay, it happened. So what? Now what? How? How do we navigate my past, my trauma potentially, the things that I don't understand? You guys still with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that word is also used a lot from other people doing to other people.
Absolutely. And I love it when people get ahead of me. You're one step ahead of me, which is great. So keep that for a minute, Silvio, because we're just about to get into this. Underneath judgment is probably, I'm going to say, one of the biggest roots of why we get stuck in anger, why people never seem to get out of the danger side of crisis. And the word that I see over and over and over is the word expectations.
Mm.
Not the same as goals, man. I'm all for goals. Expectations are deadly. The easiest way for me to describe an expectation is by switching it to a more common word called should. How many times are we struggling with, oh, I should have done this. I shouldn't be doing this anymore. Other people might do this to you. You should have known. You shouldn't be doing that. And when I hear that language, I'm telling people, stop shoulding on yourself. It does the same thing as the other word. I said shoulding on yourself.
Yeah.
O-U-L-D. So we gotta stop shoulding on ourselves because it does the same thing as the other word. It makes us feel like crap. So what we gotta figure out is, what are we supposed to do with these expectations? Because I've noticed in my line of work, everything that starts with an expectation always comes back down here to resentment. So how do we deal with this low-grade anger? Look at how this is all connected, guys. This is where it comes from. This is a cycle. We talked about a merry-go-round yesterday. This is the same kind of merry-go-round. We get stuck on what could go wrong. It drives our anger because it's not fair, it's not right, it shouldn't have happened to me, whatever. We prejudge situations because we think we're qualified to be a judge. Expectations drive our behavior, they drive our thinking, it's not fair. And you might be right. Here's the thing, it might not be fair, guys. But so what?
So what?
How do we deal with the things that are not fair? Don't come to me with the, oh, this is so unfair. You're right. I'll agree with you. You're right, guys. That's not fair. People that have inherited trauma, not fair, not right. My heart bleeds for these people. My question in their deepest, darkest moment is still, so what? And once they know my heart, they realize I'm not minimizing or belittling their trauma. Far be it for me to do that. But it's about changing the question, because why isn't going to get us where we need to go.
Right.
So we need to figure out what we're supposed to do. Where's the opportunity? How do we become a detective? And how do we manage these expectations that always seem to turn into resentment? Now, here's the enemy's greatest strategy, shame. The number one reason behind addiction, by the way, if any of us in this room struggle with addiction, it's because of shame. I think I'm the problem. I try to escape me. So what do? I turn to something. I turn to gambling. I turn to porn. I turn to drugs and alcohol. I turn to nicotine, caffeine, you name it. And I drink coffee. So I'm not outlawing some of these things, but I'm saying we need a healthy relationship with a lot of these things. And most of us don't have that. Why do we do this? Because we're trying to escape shame. And it all comes down to this final little piece, and I'm going to wrap up with this and send us on our way. There's one word that really drives this whole model, and it's the word control. Everybody wants it. Few of us have it. And because of that, it manifests in one of three ways. I don't have room to put it here. I'm just going to throw it at you really high level. We control because of fear. The what if. So I try to mitigate that fear. What if this happens? And what if this happens? And what if? So I try to control it. What ends up happening? Are we usually successful? No. We end up back here. I did this. I tried this. And I'm still, what the frig? Why? Because we're trying to take control of something that wasn't meant to be controlled. We don't actually have that responsibility sometimes. Back to what we were saying in the beginning. Control comes from fear. We need faith. It's the what if changing to the even if. Sometimes control plagues us because of distrust. This one's a tough one because I can't blow away distrust like I do fear. To me, fear stands for something. F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. It is one of the enemy's greatest strategies. Let's look at what isn't and think that it is, and then he's got us in his little trap. Where's the evidence that your fear is actually going to happen? Well, while we're talking right now, a plane could be taking off from Winnipeg and both engines die and it crashes up. Yeah, of course it's possible, but we don't live in what's possible when it comes to fear. We're looking at probable. Is it probable? No. So how do we manage these fears? How do we manage the what ifs and go back to that even if? Distrust is different because people have actually broken your trust. Distrust is a learned behavior. I put my trust out there and then they broke my trust. So what do? It's almost like finding a paintbrush and realizing, oh, that's a nice color. And then everything in my life looks like it's the same color. I keep everybody 3 paces back. I won't trust you because other men in leadership have hurt me.
Right.
I never had the dad who spoke into my life, etc., etc. So I judge. I push everybody back. That's my way of trying to control my distrust so I don't get hurt. What do we need? We need that spirit of trust again. We need to learn how to evaluate each situation on its own. And the third reason that drives control is worthlessness. We really do believe we are not of any value. That is the root of shame. I'm not enough. It goes back to that language that we talked about in that CBT model yesterday. I'm not enough. Mervyn said it. He said, I'm never going to measure up. Same kind of story. Many of us struggle with that because at the heart of a man, we are looking for significance. We want to know that what we did is going to matter. We want to leave something behind. We want to leave a legacy. We're builders. Yeah. That's what God's called us to do. And sometimes that fear, that control, driven by fear, driven by distrust, or driven by worthlessness. Many guys don't want to talk about this because it's that wound really, really deep. It's festering, it's ugly, it's stinky. And when I start talking to these men, it's almost like they all become sideshow magicians. And they're like, Troy, let's talk about this instead. Let's talk about addiction, but let's not talk about that wound really, really deep that says I'm insecure and I'm not enough and I'm going to amount to nothing. And that's what I go after right away with men. And that's what I want you guys to be able to go after as we're thinking about these things. How do we break this cycle? We're going to get into this. Today is the bad news. We're done with the bad news. I'm looking back only for this purpose so that we can go to the other side of this and keep moving forward and understand what it means to be a detective. Is that making sense?
Good.
Okay. I'm going to leave it at that. We're going to have some coffee.
Perfect.
Break.
Perfect.
What's that?
15-minute break.
There we go.
We'll come back. 10:30. Back.